The Panthers starters will play in the preseason finale on Saturday afternoon in Buffalo. I'll tell you how Dave Canales came to this conclusion right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, because on Wednesdays throughout the entirety of the regular season, I'm right here on the show answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me, but of course, click the follow button there on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in for the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. No one else is allowed to complain because Dave Canales announced on Thursday the Panthers are going to indeed play their starters during Saturday's preseason finale against the Buffalo Bills. And I already know what you're saying. Well, Julian, I can complain because I'm a free American. I can do whatever the hell I want. And because also the Panthers aren't going up against the Bills' first team unit. That was announced earlier this week that Buffalo was not going to play their starters in Saturday's preseason finale. I suppose you could call it a dress rehearsal for the Panthers, although we're not quite sure how long Bryce Young in the offensive unit and how long J.C. Horn, Jadeveon Clowney, and that defensive unit are going to play on Saturday. What we do know is that they're going to play. And I have talked about this a ton on the show the last couple of weeks about my desire to watch first team play, in particular the first team offense, based off of the fact that I didn't want to waste my Thursday night watching the backups in the Jack Plummer show. I didn't want to waste my Saturday night watching the backups in, again, the Jack Plummer show. But I do this for a living, and I'm appreciative of y'all for watching and listening and for the opportunities that Locked On gives me, that Bleacher Report gives me, and to be able to do this, to talk about my hometown team. That is not lost on me, but still, it's August, it's summer, it's not the regular season. Give me something to talk about. Week one, I can do that. We can look at the depth of the offensive line and how Jonathan Mingo and Terrace Marshall dropped the ball, and some standouts like Leota and TJ Smith and Lamar Jackson defensively in that game. I can't do that 2 weeks in a row, though, and maybe I'll enjoy Saturday's show, and I hope you did. I didn't enjoy doing it, to be honest with you, but I did it because I got to be there for y'all. And throughout all of it, I talk about week one. I didn't like it. I understand and understood the desire that Dave Canales had to see his backups and to give those guys meaningful reps and an opportunity to know what it feels like to prepare to actually be a starter and play in an NFL game. And then last week with the joint practice with the Jets, and then the fact that guys like Deontay Johnson were banged up and Damian Lewis is banged up, Chuba Hubbard had a scare, Robert Hunt had a scare, Tommy Trimble was just coming back, it made sense to not play them on Saturday. But in this game, I didn't really understand why they wouldn't play them, even if Buffalo wasn't going to play their first team offense and defense. That was immaterial to the Panthers, in my opinion, needing to get real live reps in during the preseason, because this is what it's for. The opportunity to get back into playing shape, to get your communication down, and to go out there and to play a simulated preseason game before starting the regular season, and they're going to do that on Saturday. So kudos to Dave Canales for I think probably handling it the right way, as we have talked about the injury situation for the Panthers, whether it be starters or backups, and the constant roster churn at the back of that roster because of some of those injuries. And that's not been lost on me. And he certainly has understood it. And I feel like this training staff and the Panthers training staffs have had issues in the past with a lot of injuries and taking care of guys. I really think they've taken care of these guys so far, waiting until they were fully back before putting him back out there in a situation to where they would at least be healthy and not have an immediate setback. And Dave Canales talked about on Thursday how he came to this decision, saying, my hope is to get the starters out there earlier in the game. Now, he said, my hope. They're playing. I don't know why he started off by saying my hope when very clearly he's also telling you they're going to play. So, quote, my hope is to get the starters out there earlier in the game, get them some exposure. The importance of it to me is how valuable the night before prep is. And that goes back to that preseason game up in New England, the night before prep for Jack Plummer, for the backup offensive line and everyone else to know what it feels like to be ready to go and play an NFL game. But he says it's how valuable the night before prep is, just the body readiness. The plan of this camp was to practice early so that we could have that readiness going into the season where most of our kicks are at 1 o'clock. This is a great opportunity to go through the pregame routines with each other, to have the communications on the sideline as we go into the first drive there, just gather information, talk. This is how it will feel like. And that's good. That's why you play the preseason. For what he just said there, to go through the pregame routine, to have the body readiness, to have the information, to talk, to know what the communication is supposed to be like actually on game day. You can't do that even in a joint practice, which is valuable. Some coaches argue it's more valuable than the preseason, and players feel the same way, or vice versa. They may feel like the preseason is more important than playing in a joint practice. Either way, both of them, in my opinion, and I think a lot of opinions, are beneficial. But this one is more beneficial preseason-wise because of that in-game communication, something you cannot simulate like in a real game, in a joint practice, or throughout training camp, period. So I'm happy he came to this decision. Again, y'all cannot complain. They're not playing against the Bills ones. Doesn't matter. You get to see Bryce. You get to see what the offensive line looks like. And if they play bad, yeah, you're going to be freaking out. And I will totally understand. I'm just saying, just enjoy it. Enjoy the fact that you're going to get to see the starters, albeit briefly, I would imagine. Dave Canales said they're going to play it by ear as far as how long they're going to play. He's not going to pull Bryce Young in the middle of a drive. They score a touchdown on the first drive. Maybe that's all that he needs to see. Maybe it's not. But we're going to get at least one drive of the starters, and hopefully a quarter, a half, more than what we've gotten the first 2 weeks. I'm excited to see what they look like, even if it's against the Bills starter or number twos. And another thing, too, that you can't complain about, if you were on the side or of the opinion that the Panthers need to play their starters and someone gets injured, you can't complain about it because you knew the risk, and Dave Canales knows the risk as well. And this has really all been about taking care of these guys. And to be fair to Dave Canales, he never said they wouldn't play. He always said that he was open to the idea. And I've brought that up here on the show. And if I didn't bring it up on the show, I should have brought it up on the show, but I'm pretty confident I brought it up on the show that we got to be fair to Dave Canales. You're looking at week one. As I said to y'all earlier and before, I can understand wanting to get to see what the depth looks like. They could have done that by playing Bryce Young and the starters for a series or two, like New England did with Jacoby Brissett and Drake May and their starting defense, but did not want to do that than last week. Made a lot of sense during practice. 60 snaps they got in that practice. Don't need to really see them on Saturday night against the Jets, especially when the Jet starters also aren't going to be participating in that preseason game. But really, it appeared it was all about the team's depth or lack thereof as far as guys that were available, and also just considering the health of the team and whether they could get the right work in. And Dave had this to say about just that and why he didn't play them, saying it was really about the grasp of this system. I was open to playing them in the first one. I was open to playing them in the second one. We had a couple of guys who we knew were going to be back this week. So I was like, why don't we wait another week to see them and get a stronger group and put them out there? So he knew guys like Tommy Tremble were working their way back. Guys like Damian Lewis were working their way back, and Xavier Legette. He figured, let's just wait another week. Got to join practicing with the Jets, got some valuable work in. Let's wait next week, whether Buffalo plays their starters or not, to get those guys out there and to see what they can do and to really have them with a full grasp of the system, everyone having that grasp of the system and not going out there and looking sloppy and guys not understanding what they want to do. He wanted to set them up for success. And I can agree with that, even if it's frustrating to sit there and to watch the Jack Plummer show 2 weeks in a row. Not as much last Saturday, but certainly the first week in New England was not a huge fan of that. So they're going to play. And that is something I'm happy to see and excited to see on Saturday afternoon. So it will not be a Saturday wasted watching Carolina Panthers football. And one can argue no Saturday is ever wasted watching Carolina Panthers football. But others can also argue that any Saturday watching Carolina Panthers football over the last couple of years, mainly Sundays, have been wasted. But let's think the positive here on the show moving forward, heading into the preseason finale and the start of the 2024 regular season. The Panthers were also in need of some cornerback depth, and they traded for one on Thursday afternoon. We'll go over what that means for the roster and what Michael Jackson from Seattle can provide to the Panthers heading into this 2024 season here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip a leg day or a therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip a therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Two things I feel like we've spent the majority of the last couple of weeks talking about are, one, will the Panthers starters play in the preseason? We have that answer. They're going to play on Saturday. How long? I do not know. Do not complain. Put a smile on your face. Whether it's sunny or not here in Charlotte or wherever you live, the Panthers starters are going to play, and we're one step closer to actual football. The last couple of weeks at New England last Saturday here against the Jets, that didn't feel like football. This, though, will feel closer to that. Preseason, still an abomination. Don't let things get twisted here. My feelings on the preseason, mainly an abomination because coaches won't play their starters and they know that they don't have to and that there are no repercussions to not playing them other than maybe you look sloppy for the first week. But a lot of teams look sloppy week one and they typically get a lot better between week one and week two. The second thing that we've talked a lot about is the depth of the cornerback room, or really lack thereof, and when the Panthers are going to bring another veteran corner in. And we finally got that answer on Thursday afternoon as the Panthers acquired cornerback Michael Jackson from the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for rookie linebacker Michael Barrett. I will allow you right now to make your Michael Jackson jokes. I'm sure they have happened already on Twitter and wherever else on social media. And the Panthers, they really like having guys with famous names. We had Michael Jordan, the Ohio State offensive lineman, a couple of years ago. He wasn't much help. The hope is that Michael Jackson here in Carolina playing at corner can actually be helpful. So please get all the Michael Jackson jokes out of your system. If he does well, then continue to do them, because maybe that will be a harbinger for more good things to come here in Carolina. But this was a necessary move for the Panthers to go get someone who could help them on the outside at corner. Heading into training camp, we knew it was JC Horn, but also the concern about JC. And I know, I say it all the time. He's missed 29 games out of a possible 51 games start off his 3 years in the NFL. He didn't want that. You didn't want that. The team didn't want that. But the team has placed faith in JC and also made a bet to not want to pay more money had JC stayed healthy and they had to but have to franchise tag him. They picked the fifth-year option. They're going to save money potentially on the back end if everything goes according to plan. JC has been limited throughout training camp and throughout the preseason as well. The Panthers want to make sure he's ready to go all 17 games. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, pray to whoever, don't mess with Joe. I don't know what you got to do. Burn incense. Let's just make sure J.C. Horn can play this season here in Carolina. And if he can, I think he can be a Pro Bowler. He can show the rest of the league just how good he is. He's a top 10 corner when he plays. The problem, he never plays. So knowing that, and that Dane Jackson was coming over, and Dane Jackson spent the last couple of years really being that third corner. He's been pressed into a starting role because of the injuries to Tre'Davious White there in Buffalo, and now he's getting the opportunity to be a starter, but he had a now hamstring issue, or was it hamstring, or I can't remember. It's a soft tissue injury that's going to keep him out for 6 weeks. That was going back to last week. So we're looking at probably the first 3-4 weeks of the season where he's not available. And then the Panthers surprisingly waived injured Lamar Jackson on Monday after he had been a standout throughout training camp into preseason. And if he's injured, he's injured. The Panthers can potentially bring him back later on, but being a back of the roster guy trying to fight for a spot, you're not going to sit here and wait for him when the Panthers needed immediate help. So they need to go out there and they need to bring somebody in. And coincidentally, they brought in another guy with the last name Jackson. So Dane Jackson, Lamar Jackson was here. Now Michael Jackson is here. Who is Michael Jackson, you ask? Not the performer, but the football player. He's a guy who's played in a significant amount of games the last couple of years. Started 21 games during his career. He's had an interception and 2 fumble recoveries. Looking at his stats the past 2 seasons in Seattle, and no surprise that the Panthers are bringing in a player that this staff, really offensive staff, is familiar with in Michael Jackson. Last year in 2023, he played in 17 games, starting 4 of them. His overall PFF grade was a 77, which was 19th out of 127 corners. So you got a top 20 corner last year, according to PFF, for a 7th-round pick. This is the second time, by the way, this offseason that Dan Morgan, the Panthers GM, has traded away a player who was not going to make the team for someone who can come in and immediately help the team. Earlier this year, back in March, he traded away Dante Jackson to Pittsburgh in exchange for Deontay Johnson and a 7th-round pick, which turned out to be Michael Barrett from Michigan, who now they've sent over to Seattle for Michael Jackson. So Dan Morgan has flipped Dante Jackson for Deontay Johnson and then a 7th-round pick, which they used to draft Michael Barrett to then get Michael Jackson. So if we're putting it all together, Dan Morgan traded away Dante Jackson, a player they were going to cut anyways, to bring in a starting wide receiver and a starting corner. Bravo to Dan Morgan. That is awesome business by him so far. And I know a lot of people were concerned about the hallway promotion when he was here during that Scott Fitter regime, and he was brought in to be his right-hand man. And he was also in favor of not doing the Burns through the Rams trade. I get all that. But so far, with the trades that he's made, you can't argue that that's good business to flip Dante Jackson for Deontay Johnson, a 7th-round pick that you use on Michael Barrett, then you send him out to bring in a starting corner. Well done. Bravo. Back to Michael Jackson's 2023 stats. Again, played in 17 games, started 4. Overall grade of 77.0. That's 19th out of 127 corners last year, according to PFF. Run defense grade 71.5, and now it's an area. Dane Jackson, not great against the run. JC is. Dante got better at it. Upgrade there. Coverage grade 76.9. Really good player last year as a rotational corner in Seattle. In 2022, though, he was the starter, played and started in all 17 games. His overall grade, though, was a 60.2. That was 84th out of 118 corners. I think the Panthers still have 2 corners opposite of J.C. Horn, who are more your third corner than your number 2, but they're going to have to at least rotate as that number 2 guy this year. But this is what Carolina wanted to do. They didn't want to spend a ton of money on a guy like Stephon Gilmore, who I like. Would have loved to see him here in Carolina It just was not going to happen for $7 million and potentially 10. The Panthers weren't going to give him that. And I don't think the finances clearly work for them. And I don't know if this situation worked for him as he's going to Minnesota. And yeah, they have Sam Darnold as their quarterback. So it's hard to understand how that is more appealing, but they weren't the worst team in the league, even when they lost Kirk Cousins last year to his Achilles injury. So the Panthers didn't want to spend a lot of money. And I felt like a like-for-like trade, if this is a like-for-like trade, but for player trade, or taking someone off the waiver wire made more sense for them than going out there and spending money on a starting corner like they would have had to done had they brought in Stephon Gilmore or J.C. Jackson or any of the other names that we've talked about recently, Adoree Jackson off the street. That was going to cost maybe a little bit more than what they're now paying with Michael Jackson coming over here and them trading away Michael Barrett, who wasn't going to make the team. And that's been pretty clear for a couple of weeks now. So good job by the Panthers. How does this impact the depth chart, though? J.C. Horn, obviously on the roster. Dane Jackson, we'll see if it's significant enough, that injury, to where they want to start him off on PUP, which would mean he's going to be out for the first 4 weeks of the year, which may be the case anyway, looking at that timeline when Dave told us that he was 6 weeks away. That 6th week would be right there the Thursday heading into that week 4 matchup at home against the Bengals. I don't know. Conventional wisdom tells you if the guy's been out for that time, that he's probably not going to play in that game anyway. So maybe the Panthers want to have him out on PUP so that can give them some flexibility to where they could keep DiCaprio, Budo, or Deshaun Jameson. Because right now, as I see it, if they decide that they're only going to keep 5, and they got to keep 5 safeties, looking at it as 10 defensive backs, JC, Dane Jackson, Troy Hill, Michael Jackson, then the 5th round pick out of Washington State, Smith-Wade, who's more of a guy for the future, who they like. That would be the 5. And that would leave DiCaprio, Budo, and Deshaun Jameson not on the roster, and potentially those guys signing as practice squad players. But if they decide to put Dane Jackson on PUP, it's JC, it's Troy Hill, it's Michael Jackson, it's Smith-Wade, and I would guess probably DiCaprio, Budo. We'll have to wait and see. That is one thing that's interesting. Last year, they brought in Troy Hill around this time. Really, I think it was maybe a couple days earlier in the week going into the final preseason game. And you know, he was immediately going to be on the roster. Wasn't a trade. It was just a guy they signed off the street. Michael Jackson clearly going to be on the roster. And that's not good news, in my opinion, for DiCaprio, Budo, and Deshaun Jameson, provided that the Panthers don't put Dane Jackson on the PUP list heading into the season. That is physically unable to perform, by the way, for those who do not know. Okay, Panther starters are going to play on Saturday, not against the Bills once. That's fine. Not super concerned about that. But there are 3 things I'm looking to see on Saturday, and I'll tell you what those are. And we'll also take a quick look at the injury update, as Dave Canales gave us an update on Thursday morning as well. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24-hour. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. In fact, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Everyone's getting what they want. The Panthers starters will play on Saturday. I suppose not everybody's getting what they want. I'm sure there's got to be someone out there who's incensed that the Panthers starters were going to play and that they think that this is a bad move. They're going to get hurt. We can't have that happening. And maybe it happens. But again, just be happy. Put a smile on. It's a Saturday. You have football. Just enjoy it. Okay, let's try to do that. If you can't, go do something else. If you can't, well, I guess, you could still sit there if you want. All right. 3 things I'm looking for during Saturday's game. First one, offensively, yeah, we're wanting to see what Bryce Young does, what Deontay Johnson does, Adam Thielen, all that. What about Xavier Legette? What's he going to do? Because so far, he hasn't done anything. I was recording the NFC South preview show of Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints and James Yarko of Locked On Bucks and Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons. And we're talking about rookies, what rookie's going to make an impact. And I told them Trevin Wallace, based off of what we've seen from him and also the way he's been talked about so far. Xavier Legette, we haven't seen him. Since he came to Carolina, he's been banged up with a hamstring injury dating back to OTAs. And I suppose it's something where they were trying to be cautious, which has been the theme with injuries since Dave Canales has come here. And that is not a bad thing. We didn't really get to see him back then. Then once training camp opened up, he got hurt. Before he got hurt, wasn't doing much, wasn't making much of an impact. Then had a foot injury, sat out about a week, came back. They were trying to get him back conditioned. He's been out there this week. I need to see Xavier Legette on the field making plays. Why do I need to see that? Because Panthers spent a first-round pick on him, and they expect him to be someone who can help them down the road. And right now, I don't know what the future of the wide receiver position is, and it's not like we have to know that here at the end of August, heading into roster cutdown day next week and heading into the 2024 season. But what I do know is that Deontay Johnson is a free agent after the season. What I also know is that Adam Thielen's 34 damn years old, which is old in the NFL, and not a lot of tread left on those tires. So eventually, they're going to have to find somebody to link up with Bryce or whoever the quarterback's going to be in the future. Mingo, haven't seen enough from him. Terrace Marshall Jr., is he even going to be here this time next week? Xavier Legette, they're married to him for the next 4 years, and they're hoping beyond that. They want to give him the fifth-year option. That's why they traded up to go get him there in the first round when it wasn't necessary at all. And they also want him to, of course, be the guy. So go be the guy. I want to see him. Haven't seen him. Feels like all preseason long. Needs to make an impact. It's still wide open. TMJ may not be here in a couple of days' time. Mingo will be. He's in that spot. He has not impressed. Xavier Legette, show us. That's what Dave Canales said. Show us. So show us. Number 2, Jadeveon Clowney and the pass rush. I am skeptical that Jadeveon Clowney is going to have 9.5 sacks again this year in Carolina, especially when DJ Windham's not available. And everyone else we've seen not named Ekuliota, even throw Luigi Villain, has not shown the prowess that they're going to be any better at getting after the passer this season than they were a year ago, looking at you, DJ Johnson. So I want to see what Jadeveon Clowney looks like. We haven't got to really see him. I know they've been trying to save him, and I guess he's going to play. It sounds like they want to wait till the regular season, but he's going to play. Want to see what kind of impact he has coming off the edge, and also just how he impacts the run defense, where I think he really is going to be valuable this year. I think more valuable in that facet than getting after the passer. As he talked about, that's more about effort. Where getting after the passer is more of an art, and an art that I just don't think the Panthers are going to be very good at. It's going to be a lot of finger painting this year, not going to be any sort of Mozart. Or is that, oh my, I just made a terrible reference because Mozart is a musician, right? Picasso, damn. Picasso, finger painting, not Picasso. Jeez. Okay, go ahead. Throw tomatoes at me. I got that one wrong. Tried too hard. The pass rush is not going to be good this year. I'm concerned about that. And I'd like to be less concerned about that by seeing DJ Johnson and the guys not named Jadeveon Clowney do something on Saturday against the Bills too. Number 3. Roster battles. Safety. There's like 7 guys they could have on the roster. Xavier Woods, according to Dave Canales, he's day-to-day with that groin injury. So he's running close to top speeds, trending in the right direction to start week 1 with Jordan Fuller, Nick Scott. Those 3, they're solid. After that, Sam Franklin Jr. is going to start the season off, I would believe, on PUP with the foot injury. So we're going to have to wait and see when he's going to be available to go at some point this season. You got guys like Rudy Ford, who they just brought in last week, who started a couple games the last couple years in Green Bay. They have Alex Cook as well, who the staff signed last year off the Giants practice squad, and he started 2 games, and they seem to be pretty impressed by him. They have Damani Richardson, who had a massive week last week, picking out Bryce Young. Jack Plummer, less impressive than having an interception in that preseason game on that Saturday night. 3 picks 1 week for the UDFA at A&M. You have those 3 guys, and you also have Jamie Robinson trying to battle for the roster after being drafted in the 5th round of Florida State last season. So there's 4 guys battling for, right now, 2 spots, and any of the 4 can make it. And I'm very curious to see who ends up making the roster. Looking at wide receiver, aside from Xavier Legette, Terrace Marshall Jr., do something. Prove why you should stay around. Also, prove to the rest of the league why they should trade for you, because I think that's what Panthers want to do. Jalen Coker, now or never. Haven't really seen a lot from him. There's some other guys as well. Amir Smith-Marset shows something more than just returning. Mike Boone at the running back spot. I was told last week, looks like he's going to make the roster, but there's also Raheem Blackshear. Haven't seen him. Is that more of Mike Boone's going to get the chance, or is it just Blackshear's been seen as a starter? Why put him out there in those situations? I was kind of surprised by that. Mike Boone, another opportunity to show why he should be on the roster. Then Jack Plummer. This is it, buddy. This is it. He was bad against New England, was better against the Jets, but still not good. Prove something. Prove that you're worth the roster spot. I don't think you are. And even if you go out and throw for 500 yards on Saturday, I'm still not going to believe it, because I don't think it's worth wasting a spot on a guy who you never want to play and who cannot help you on special teams. So those are things I'm also looking at. The roster battles, the back of the roster guys. You get one last chance to impress, and that is what Saturday's about. But it's also about us not being bored to death and getting to see the Panther starters play. A couple of injury updates heading into that game. Deontay Johnson apparently left practice on Thursday. Dave Canales said that he was feeling sick. It's more of a day-to-day thing. They wanted to quarantine him. We hate hearing that word after 2020, but they're quarantining him and giving him some time, and they'll see whether he's good to go on Saturday. Hopefully he is good to go. But if he's not, more opportunities for Xavier Legette to show us something. Tommy Trimble, he's been on a pitch count since he came back last week from that hamstring. He kind of grabbed at it, apparently, according to Mike Kay, the Charlotte Observer, and Dave Canales said he's on a pitch count, and that's normal soreness. We're not concerned about it. Sounds like he's trending towards playing on Saturday. Yosh Nijman, for the first time since Panthers came to camp here in Uptown Charlotte, was wearing a helmet and was doing some drills with Joe Gilbert off to the side during special teams period. Dave Canales also said he's trending in the right direction. He remains on the PUP list, physically unable to perform, and we'll have to find out if he'll get off that list by week 1 or if he'll still be on it. If he's off it, then I feel good about the Panthers' depth. If he's on it, I don't feel great about the Panthers' depth, because they go from having 7 guys that you can count on to only having 6 and being that much closer to being in deep doo-doo. And then Andy Dalton, they would love to see him play. He had the calf injury. He's been back out there. Of all the guys, I just don't think we need to see Andy Dalton. It's funny. Like, I'm totally fine with seeing Jack Plummer, what he can do or really not do. And I'm cool, obviously, seeing Bryce Young. Andy Dalton, seeing it. Don't need to see it. We know we're getting out of Andy Dalton here in Carolina. Another situation where you hope he never plays, but you know you can depend on him to a certain extent if he comes out there and has to play this year. He's day-to-day, and we'll see if he plays. Again, don't need it. Maybe a series. We'll see. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays, once the regular season begins, I'm here every week answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me to get them in. And do not make me beg you like I had to do earlier this week. Get those questions into me. All right, but in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Saturday live right here on YouTube following the Carolina Panthers preseason finale. And dare I say, win against the Buffalo Bills.